topic change management in workforce planning. But before I begin, I'd like to let us know that if you have any form of question to ask after the presentation, kindly use the Q&A section. If you have any view to share or any knowledge to share from the presentation, please use the chat box. But if you feel like speaking after the presentation, you kindly raise your hand by clicking on the emoji. Then you'll be asked to unmute and speak. We'd like to let everyone know that it is important we all maintain a peaceful atmosphere so that we avoid any form of distraction. And I'd like to encourage every one of us to participate actively in this session because we have a power-packed session awaiting us. At this point, I'd like to introduce our speaker for the night. His name is Mr. Michael Alassa. I'll read out his profile now, but before I do that, I'd like to share his profile for everybody to read along. Can anyone see the profile? Can
Not yet.
Yes. I'm not seeing any profile now.
Okay, let me share. Can anybody see anything?
No.
Hello?
Not yet.
We can hear you.
Not yet.
Okay, let me go. Let me continue. Let me read. Mr. Michael Alassa, a progressive and dynamic leader. Michael Alassa is a recognized senior HR strategist with extensive experience driving organizational transformation and evolution. His passion for nurturing talent and enabling people to thrive makes him a sought-after advisor to executive teams across Pan-African enterprises. He previously served as chairman and vice chairman, Corporate Communications Commission, and vice chairman for Legal, Regulatory, and Global Affairs with Association of Elite Human Resource Professionals. He previously served as Director for Strategy, Partnership, and Project Performance for Arise Africa Global Alliance, that's Africa Business Expo USA, Africa Continent. He is the founder of Recruiting Consulting Limited, which has executed businesses outside and within Africa. He was also an advisory council member of Talent Exchange Network, Zimbabwe, Africa, before he was elevated as a board member. As a collaborative partner and system thinker, Michael is talented at bringing out the best in people through situations of change, growth, and challenge. His diverse exposure stimulates a creative global approach to problem solving that opens opportunities. Trusted for his ethics, emotional intelligence, and ability to bridge differences, Michael believes participative, engaging management elicits ongoing excellence. This produces the responsive agility and innovation that allows African enterprises to become globally competitive while retaining their unique character. With deep expertise and genuine care for people, he is the wise guide for organizations that organizations seek when ready to transform. Currently, Michael serves as Chief Operating Officer at Black Skill Limited, an innovative firm focused on next generation HR solutions tailored specifically for African businesses. He brings keen strategic perspective enhanced by senior roles in aviation, automobile, banking, oil and gas, FMCG, financial services, fintech, transport and logistics, health, HR tech, and consulting sectors. It is my pleasure to introduce once again Mr. Michael Alata. Mr. Michael, you are welcome. So
Yeah,
it's
good
time for you
evening.
to take control of the lesson. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, wonderful moderator. Good evening, everyone. Good evening to the Board of Trustees, AHRP. Good evening to the Learning Committee. Thank you so much for giving me this privilege, this opportunity to share knowledge about this topic. I too am also here to learn. While I was preparing this, my slides, I learned a lot while preparing it, so I'm always open to learning, and I know that some of my ogas are here. I can see Dr. Michael Ogu, I give him respect. I can see many people here who actually know very well, but I'm just here to share what I know, and I know that we are going to rub minds together. So let me quickly share my screen. I would like us to confirm if you can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
All right,
I
thank
can.
you very much. Okay, let me quickly hide this. All right, so we have a long way to go, but I'll just share what I know. And thanks to the leadership of the Learning Committee, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to talk on change management in workforce planning. We all know so much around about what workforce planning is all about, but how can we actually implement change management successfully, efficiently, seamlessly when it comes to workforce planning? So what's the objective number of this training, of this, this session, is to firstly recognize the dynamic factors influencing change in today's business environment. We need to also explore methods for aligning strategic vision with workforce planning initiatives. We need to also recognize the pivotal roles of individuals in driving and adapting to organizational changes. And we also need to develop we also need to develop skills in engaging and communicating with stakeholders of various organizational levels. Lastly, we need to develop strategies. We need to understand how to develop strategies. And okay, I think let me just bring it up here. Develop strategies to effectively manage and mitigate resistance during workforce planning. So they've actually read out my profile, my humble profile. I'm still going places. I'm very humble. I'm just starting anyway. So, and always a very big thank you to AHRP. I'm always grateful to AHRP for the platform they have actually given me so far for many years. I have really benefited from them. So quickly, I would like to talk, I would like us to log on to www.menti.com. I want every one of us to log on to menti.com and use this code. That's 83716698. I think we have about 5 questions there. I want every one of us to participate. They are simple questions, but I just want every one of us to actually participate. So can we quickly do that in the next 5 minutes, please? Thank you. Please, I want to confirm, can you all see my my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Okay. I want to stop sharing. Okay, stop sharing. so that I can. So are we all logged on? The
Sorry,
code
can you
is
share your screen? Okay.
837166. Yeah. 83716698. Okay, so let me
So
share my
you have to
screen.
wait till you move the slide or something.
Okay, so can you all see my screen now? It's on change management poll. So the code number is 83716698. Okay. Thank you everyone for those that are already contributing their points, their feedback. Thank you very much. Okay, so the first question we have here is how effectively does the organization manage change to integrate strategic vision? The other one we have, how well does your organization communicate changes in workforce planning to employees? And then we also have, does the organization provide sufficient support and resources for employees during times of change? And then we also have another one here. How effectively does senior management demonstrate leadership buy-in and support for workforce planning initiatives? And then the last one is, to what extent are employees involved in decision-making process during workforce planning initiatives? So we still have 3 more minutes. Let's all contribute. I know we already have some participants, but let's fill the other questions. Okay, so please let's quickly answer the questions. Our time is fast spent.
Okay, I think you have to change the slide. It's asking me to wait for the presenter to change slides.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Let me stop sharing. Okay, let me
Because
stop
I can't get
sharing.
the other questions. Okay.
Okay, let me just stop sharing. Okay. And we now,
This slide is yet to still change, please.
okay, it's not still changing. So what are we seeing at the moment? Is it my presentation slide or the Mentimeter?
It's saying the presenter hasn't changed slides yet.
I've even stopped sharing. Well,
No,
anyways,
the Mentimeter, not Zoom.
oh, okay, the Mentimeter, okay.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Let me just. Okay, about 20% have responded. So can we move our slides now?
No, it's still as it is. Okay, it's moving now. No.
Okay, my time is almost up on the poll. Can we now access the other polls, the other questions?
For me, it's still no.
It is still telling me that you haven't changed the slide yet.
Same
Is that
thing I
true?
have on my own.
Salah, I think you should move on your presentation on your slide. I think maybe if you move to the next slide, we can have probably we'll see
Okay.
question. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I just even logged out so that anyways, so that'd be nice for us to okay. I think I'm not getting it I'm not getting it well right now, but let me see if I can log in. Okay. So seems to be having glitches on it. It's quite unfortunate, but I just want us to have a clue about these questions. At least going to help us to have an insight into what is expected. But let me just proceed. Let me just proceed. Apologies for the glitches. Let me just continue. All right, so can you all see my screen, my presentation slide?
Yes.
All right, okay. Okay, so sorry about the glitches. I actually wanted us to enjoy the questions and have an insight, but maybe some other time. All right, so quickly, what this is really, sorry where I can hide. Okay, so we're talking about so we're talking about change management in the workforce planning, and we're going to talk about workforce planning first, because I know we have general understanding about what workforce planning is all about. So workforce planning is a strategic process used by organizations to forecast their future staffing needs and ensure that the right people with their required skills are in the right jobs at the right time. And of course, this is what we do use to assess the current workforce capabilities, the skill sets that we currently have in the business, and of course, projecting future talent requirements in line with the organizational goals, and of course, developing strategies to address any gaps that are identified. And the primary aim is to have the necessary human resources and talent in place to achieve business objectives. But we also need to talk about the key stakeholders of workforce planning in any organization. Who are the key stakeholders of workforce planning? It can't just happen. Some people have to make it happen, right? There are some forces that we have to do what implement workforce planning. So these stakeholders are the people or the personnel or the individuals. They lead and oversee workforce planning in an organization. And who are they? The HR departments, the head of departments, the team leads, the leadership and executive team, the finance team, employees generally, and probably external consultants. And we know what each of these departments do. Like, for example, the HR, they spearhead the overall planning process. They analyze employee data, they identify talent gaps and formulate strategies to address needs. And for the department managers or the HODs or the line managers, of course, they are also very critical and they provide on-the-ground insights into emerging skill requirements, upcoming projects, and expected staffing changes within their units because they interface with the employees, they interface with this key staff, they see their gaps, they see a lot of things, that plays out in their departments, which definitely is tied to the overall goal and objective of the organization, of the department, and of course, in terms of individual KPIs. So,
you buy
so we
for
also have, okay, I think someone is actually, we need to mute the person. Then we also have the leadership and executive team, that's the C-suite executive. They set the broader strategic vision and priorities that shapes the workforce goals. We have the finance, we have the employees, and of course we have the external consultants. So of course, some organizations bring in HR consultants or firms to provide an independent experts' perspective on workforce analysis and planning. And these consultants, they lend an objective and experience-based information to identify industry best practices and advice on strategic human capital management. So I think this floating meeting control is actually affecting my slide. Is there a way it can actually be removed? Our moderator?
Sorry, please.
The floating meeting control is actually affecting my slide. So I'm going to hide it, but I notice is being clicked on again. So I'm going to hide it now.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much. So we need to know the key models and methodologies that informs and enable effective workforce planning. Some things have to happen. The models that are involved, in enabling an effective workforce planning. Number one, we need to look at supply and demand forecasting. The supply and demand forecasting. For example, if you look internally now, maybe you need to right size. You look internally into your workforce, maybe for a department, for example, look at the required skill set that are needed. Maybe you need about 40 staff at the moment, but currently you only have 20 staff. And the gaps are still there. So with that one, it shows that the demand is higher than the supply. So the supply and the demand forecasting plays a vital role in having an effective workforce planning because it informs and enables that process. We also have the skill gap analysis. So once we have the objective, the goal, the plan of the organization for maybe quarter one or quarter two or quarter three, we have to look at, okay, who are the resources that are needed to achieve this? And skill gap is not only about the talent, you look at the resources, you look at the tools, you look at many things, to say, okay, this is the gap analysis under skills, under resources, under this and that. So, but I'm talking about the skill gap analysis here. You look at the resources that are needed, you look at the talents that are needed for them to be able to carry out what is expected. So skill gap analysis also contributes to us having robust information and enabling an effective workforce planning. Succession planning too is also part of it. Talent pipeline modeling is also part of it. Scenario planning is part of it. Cost benefit analysis is part of it. Workforce analytics is also part of it. And of course, workforce segmentation too is also part of it. By the time you segment your talents, you look at those that are, I've forgotten the right word to use, but by the time you segment your talents, you know those that are highly critical to the business. When you do criticality of talent, identification of criticality of talent, you'll be able to know, okay, for this talent, I need to have a pipeline for them. For this talent, if this talent leaves the organization, do I have plan B or plan C in terms of my succession plan. So those things are being considered when it comes to an effective workforce planning. And of course, I've been able to explain further about these models like supply and demand forecasting, that's predicting future talent needs by analyzing factors like business growth plan, employee turnover, retirement eligibility, labor market trends. It also allows employers to anticipate hiring and talent gaps. If I am to talk about the cost benefit analysis, that's evaluating the return on investment and the total cost of ownership for different workforce programs and initiatives. We have scenario planning, that's developing various workforce scenarios and contingency plan based on different potential business conditions. And of course, it helps to build strategic agility. Like, for example, during the election, the federal election, presidential election, what are those contingency plans that was put in place, for us to still ensure that the business is still running effectively while employees are not fully at the workstation, So these are part of the things you have to do: scenario planning, your talent pipeline modeling. You have to also map out your workforce inflow and outflow, the attrition, and of course your recruitment channels. Then of course, workforce analytics, that's applying data analytics to HR data by deriving insights for strategic decision making on workforce issues. With that, you'll be able to, for example, if it's exit management, you'll be able to discover the types of exit process. Is it voluntary? Is it involuntary? Is it relocation? All those things, you need to also put that into consideration. All these things actually help in enabling a workforce planning process. So I would like to talk about fundamentals of organizational change. So organizational change initiatives require careful planning and execution to be successful. Leaders must start by clearly understanding the drivers and goals of the desired change. Whether incremental improvements or wholesale transformation, they need to realistically anticipate how employees will react to change, both embracing it and resisting it at different paces. A compelling vision and strategic priorities must be defined, communicated organizational-wide, and must be communicated organization-wide to provide direction and rally support. So before you are going to implement organizational change initiatives, you have to look at the pros and cons. You have to look at the impacts, both positive and negative. You have to look at the key stakeholders that will be involved. How will they sit down well with them? Okay, who are those that are going to resist this change? You have to carefully plan the process and the implementation or execution process, and that's why we are going to talk about the reasons for change. When you see leadership trying to implement change, there are reasons for that. There are really reasons for that. And maybe part of the reasons which I highlighted there is to stay competitive, or to drive growth, or to improve efficiency, or to adapt to technology shifts, and in the process of doing this, they have the understanding of the key drivers to change, because it is very foundational. You must have a better understanding of who are the key drivers of change in your organization. As HR people, we should be able to know those key drivers of change in the organizations. So we can't just implement change without not actually considering some either external factors or internal factors. Like for what I just mentioned here, there are some organizations maybe they want to stay competitive in the markets. Definitely, they have to rework their internal process. They have to, revamp maybe one of their processes or whatsoever, or their procedures. That will definitely lead to organizational change. Or maybe it's for them to embrace technology. AI, now that AI is highly involving, in many organizations, it's changing a lot of things about our workplace structure. So Many things can lead to organizational change, but the planning and execution is actually very, very key. And there are types of change based on what I've been able to highlight here. There are types of change. So we have incremental versus transformational. We have structural versus procedural. We have strategic versus operational. And of course, we also have the aspect of recognizing larger or smaller shifts, which is also very crucial. But I will just highlight some of them in the next slide. So fundamental of organizational change. For incremental change, it's talking about smaller scale changes that enhances or adjusts existing processes, structures, or the ways of work. For example, updating software systems, adding new policy, or just tweaking a business process, which is less disruptive. So that's one type of change. We have strategic change. That's the larger changes focused on significant shifts in probably strategy, objectives, competitive approach, or business model. Maybe this model is not working anymore. We have to, change it. We have to rejig our business model. And of course, this will definitely involve the entire company or business units, which is actually going to be more disruptive. So the ratio, how do I want to put it? The levels of changes which is going to be adopted will determine how the change process is going to be implemented. So like there are different types, like we have transformational here, we have structural, we have procedural, we have people-focused change, and we have technological change. All these things will definitely impact the decision-making process, the tools to adopt, the processes to adopt, communication means, and whatsoever that's actually going to drive that process successfully. So I'm going to talk about navigating organizational change in a disruptive business landscape. The modern business environment is increasingly dynamic, disrupted by technological innovations, globalized markets, and of course, shifting customer expectations. As we could see now, customer expectations are drastically changing. And we can talk about their behavior too, customer behavior. So if you're in the FMCG, what is the current behavioral trends of customers right now? If you're in the tech space, what's the trend right now? If you're actually maybe in the manufacturing space, what's the trend right now? So all these things have highly disrupted the modern business environments. And to remain competitive, organizations must be agile. Organizations must be agile. They have to be nimble, just like the way our global president have mentioned several times, in his book. We have to be nimble. We have to be agile. I remember the book that was published by our global president, but this actually talks so much around that. And of course, organizations need to proactively adapt through well-planned change initiatives. Leaders who want to successfully guide their organizations through turbulence and uncertainty need to fully understand the key factors driving the imperative for change. So the factors driving change in today's business environment, I mentioned that earlier. We have technological disruption. We all know that already. We have customers' expectations. We have data proliferation. We have remote hybrid work. We have war for talent. We have diversity and inclusion. We have sustainability. War for talent, we can extend it to JACPA and JACPADA. So there are a lot of things that have really contributed to the factors that are really driving change in today's business environment. So the rapid acceleration of emerging technologies is perhaps the most persuasive change driver today. Cloud computing, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, robotics, automation are revolutionizing operations, services, business models, and entire industry. So companies must undertake digital transformation strategies to capitalize on these technologies. So I'm talking about technological disruption at the moment. And of course, they have to take advantage of it. They have to capitalize it so that they won't be rendered obsolete. So adapting to this new digital landscape requires updating systems, reskilling workforces, and modifying processes to leverage automation and data-driven decision making. So we will need to talk about the strategic integration and alignment of change management. Let me bring this down. We need to look at how can we be strategic in integrating and aligning our change initiatives. We need to talk about that. So how can we do that? The first thing is you need to align your change initiatives with overall corporate strategy and vision, which is very crucial for success. If the direction of the company is A and your change initiative is going to be direction and is not aligning with A, then it's going to be a total waste. So changes should move the organization towards strategic goal and not the other way around. So that's one of the best ways to integrate successfully and align your change initiative. Two, proposed changes should be assessed on how they impact and integrate across departments, systems, workflow, culture. That's cross-functional collaboration, which is also very key. So you have to carry people along, key stakeholders, key departments. You have to, for example, if you want to implement an HRS now, of course, you have to work with each department. As an HR person, you must collaborate with all the departments, especially the key players in those departments. Then, of course, potential barriers to change must be understood, like the inertia, the risk aversion, competing priorities. They need to be identified and addressed through communication, incentives, support system. All these things that I'm actually highlighting will form your change strategy documents, your processes, what you need to do. You're going to create that strategy. You are going to create it with maybe your team that is actually going to help you to drive the change initiatives. You're going to do what? Develop that strategy. Also, someone is actually drawing something on my slide anyways. Okay, so change should be broken down into phased road maps of manageable milestones and targets. This will definitely maintain the momentum. I'm talking about we strategically integrating and aligning our change initiatives when it comes to workforce planning. Then we need to also talk about the metrics, the dashboard, the tracking mechanism that must be established to monitor the progress and the results. This enables course correction. And lastly, reward systems and individual performance metrics may need realignments to reinforce and sustain desired changes. So all these things can help us to strategically integrate and align change initiatives, but as I've earlier mentioned, all these steps, we need to do what? We need to follow them. We need to, adopt them and implement the change initiatives. So systemic ways to ensure strong strategic alignment and integration for organizational change initiatives. The first thing you need to do, I'm just continuing from what I've earlier mentioned, you need to conduct strategic analysis. You need to analyze how proposed change aligns with the overall corporate strategy. I've mentioned that before, the mission, the objective. You need to define the strategic fit. That's you articulating how the change initiative supports strategic priorities. Then, of course, cross-functional, I've mentioned that before. But I need to also mention the process of buy-in. You securing buy-in, that's executive sponsorship. You must get the buy-in of senior leaders, key people that, that we have a huge impact or influence on that change initiative. That is also very important. Another part is you must develop a communication plan. The communication, if you're talking about competencies, level 1 is different from level 2, is different from level 3, is different from level 4, is different from level 5. How are you going to communicate this information, this strategy across board So you should have a plan, right? You need to have a plan, develop a comprehensive communication plan to build awareness and understanding across all impacted groups. Then you must have phased roadmap, because if you don't have phased roadmap, it will be cumbersome. In fact, it's something that will be overwhelming for you. So break it into pieces, work smart, break into pieces, break the initiative into logical phases with milestones, targets, and measure clearly. They mapped out from start to finish. And lastly, integrate systems. Tools that will be needed, processes that will be needed to modify, integrate the systems with the change. Make sure that it runs smoothly. Make sure that it runs smoothly. In continuum, there are other things I also want to mention here. Training alignment. There are some critical changes that maybe an organization needs to implement. There will definitely be need for training. So you ensure training and skill building programs to equip employees with the right knowledge and capabilities needed for the change. So you need to train them and make sure that those trainings are well aligned to the change initiatives, which is tied down to the overall to reinforce values, connect deep roots impacts, then continuous improvements, building feedback loops, performance reviews, mechanism to refine change approaches throughout the implementation. So aligning an organization's strategic vision with its workforce planning initiative this before, you have to conduct what to map future plans. You have to develop competency. You need to perform gap analysis. And of course, you need to advance high potentials like you also retaining top talent. You need to restructure the organization. You need to refine performance metrics, and you need to communicate strategic focus. All these things are the key components that are needed for you to drive change management when it comes to workforce planning. So this thing is really disturbing me. So we integrating human capital considerations seamlessly into strategic change efforts is also a critical part of change management. So how can we integrate human capital considerations? Because in the process of we auditing, okay, these are the things we need to do. This is the change initiative we need to adopt. We also need to put human capital considerations. We need to put that into consideration, the human capital, salient points that are identified, and it must be integrated seamlessly into the strategic change that we want to implement. So integrating human capital consideration seamlessly into strategic change efforts. The first one is assessing impact on roles. So when you want to implement change, new changes or different types of changes that your organization have come to realize that they need to implement is maybe within the first quarter, or maybe within the first 6 months, or maybe for a year, for example. You need to assess the impact on roles too. Because when evaluating any strategic change, you must make sure you assess how roles, responsibilities, and capabilities will need to shift and plan for transitions. So these have to be put into consideration. Then you need to analyze the skill gaps. You need to identify what new skills or knowledge will be required for the change, and any gaps that needs to be addressed through hiring or training. Then you need to engage employees early. Involve employees in shaping the changes by soliciting their inputs, their feedback, ideas, and of course, build buy-in. If you don't engage employees early and you're just coming to impose it on them, is going to be wasted effort because they are also part of the critical key stakeholders of change management. Then, of course, you need to train your staff, for new competencies, and of course, you need to reshape the team dynamics. I would also like to mention that in the process of integrating human capital considerations, we need to refine performance metrics and ensure that performance management systems like OKRs, KPIs, and evaluation evolves to reinforce and measure behaviors that aligns with strategic changes. We also need to update recruitment profiles because there are some roles that maybe the expectation of the process have changed. And so we need to also update those profiles. So we need to align the job descriptions, especially for those profiles that we are recruiting. We need to align the job descriptions, recruiting screens, and onboarding to acquire talent with the requisite abilities to meet strategic needs. Then we also need to review compensation reward. If the change is actually having a strong impact on that, we will definitely need to review compensation and rewards. You have to repurpose compensation incentives and rewards to motivate and retain top talent critical for strategic success. Communication is a very critical tool that is needed when it comes to implementing change management around workforce analysis. So you need to communicate impact on careers, provide clarity to employees. Clarity is very key. Clarity is very key. You need to clarify the expectations, the pros and cons to employees on how these strategic changes may impact either their function, their processes, or maybe their career development paths, or maybe to the organization. But we need to clearly do this to the employees. Then, of course, you need to monitor the cultural implications. You need to track employee sentiments and diagnostics to assess how the changes are being absorbed into the organizational culture over time. So these are ways we can integrate human capital considerations seamlessly into strategic change efforts. Okay, so the next thing I would like to talk about is stakeholder engagement strategies. Stakeholder engagement strategies. So the first thing I would like to talk about when it comes to stakeholder engagement strategies, we are talking about the strategies on how to do what? To engage stakeholders, right? Get their buy-in, make sure that they understand what the change initiative is all about. So for you to engage stakeholders, you have to consider the different levels, organizational levels in the business. That is also very important in terms of engaging and communicating with stakeholders at different organizational levels. So let's start from the executive and leadership team. You need to provide clear reasoning behind the change and how it aligns to strategic goals. So this is number one on your list. You need to provide clear reason behind the change and how it aligns to strategic goals. Secondly, you need to share high-level implementation plans and expected business outcomes. Then you need to discuss the risks and mitigation strategies. You need to define specific expectations of leadership in driving the change. That's where you are trying to get their buy-in. And you lastly need to confirm executive sponsorship and change advocacy. So for us to be able to get the stakeholders involved in the process of change management when it comes to workforce planning, you need to firstly identify the organizational levels, and you need to put a strategic process flow, which is going to help you in achieving that. And for the leadership team, these are the steps or the strategies I've been able to identify for us. So we need to provide clear reasoning behind the change, make sure it is well aligned to strategic goals, share high-level implementation plans and expected business outcome, discuss the risks and, of course, mitigation strategies. You need to define specific expectations of leadership in driving the change, and make sure you get executive sponsorship. Well, that's more like buying. Then for the middle management level, middle managers, the line managers, HODs, and co, You need to educate them on the implications and impacts to their departmental operations. You need to make them understand the impacts of the change initiatives, because we are dealing with people, and it's not only about people, process, system. Products too is also there. So this is the more like the engine line, the catalytic line that must be highly considered. And that's the line manager, because they are the ones that will drive enforcement. Even though HR are going to put in your best, but these middle managers, you must educate them. And it's not one time, it's not two times. You have to make sure that they understand what the change initiative is all about. And then you need to clarify new roles, responsibility, and performance expectations. It depends on the kind of change. Maybe it's people-based change or whatsoever it could be, whereby it's having an impact on roles, or maybe they need to merge some roles. They need to, just like AHRP now, for this new tenure, they had to merge some committees together. All those things are things that needs to be communicated to the right key stakeholders that will be able to, that will be driving the change initiative. So clarity is very clear, clarification is very clear when it comes to new roles, responsibility, performance expectation. Then you need to also equip them with talking points to relay to direct reports. So the team members that are working with them, you have to equip them so that they will know what to say. So you can share a lot of information with them. Key information that they need to know, points that they can use to, harness the change initiatives. Then, of course, you have to solicit their feedback, because you need to get their buy-in. And of course, from the feedback, you'll be able to quickly identify potential hurdles and challenges. You also need to empower them to lead elements of the change implementation. Okay. Then for the front lines employees, we know who the front lines employees are. These people, they are the ones that will really do the job. So you need to communicate how employees' day-to-day work will be affected. You need to address direct concerns on job stability, requires new skills, workflow changes. You need to convey the benefits of the change and support resources available. And then, of course, you need to train them on the new tools that we are probably you're procuring, the processes, maybe new processes, new procedures, new workflow, the duties that are required of them. You need to train them. Of course, you need to also encourage questions and inputs through open two-way dialogue, which is still more like communication. Because some of them, they might actually be scared. Why? Because they don't have that full grasp of what the change initiative is all about. So you have to encourage questions so that you can clear their doubts, and they can also fully have their buy-in. You can get their full buy-in in the process. So to incorporate stakeholders into the change process, just to summarize, you need to identify the key players that are needed to influence and drive change success. You need to assess analysis, communication and training needs of each group. You need to also develop targeted messaging and education for each audience. And then you also need to define specific roles and contributions expected of the identified key players or identified stakeholders. You also need to establish mechanisms for regular feedback and involvement. And lastly, you need to consistently thank these stakeholders for their partnership and recognize their contribution. These are strategies, these are processes that must be adopted, when it comes to change management, especially when you want to incorporate the stakeholders into the change process. Now, as you are engaging people gradually from the top to the middle level, and of course to the the frontline employees, definitely you should anticipate resistance. Why? Maybe for some of them, it might be clarity. For some of them, maybe they're just rigid. They are not flexible. There are lots of reasons that can actually contribute to resistance. But how can you manage resistance effectively? How can you manage resistance effectively when it eventually occurs? So we need to identify the sources. You cannot actually solve an issue without not identifying the problem. You need to find out the root cause analysis of what this resistance is all about. Maybe it's from a department, maybe it's from an individual, maybe it's from a specific cadre. You need to identify the sources of resistance. And one of them is fear of job loss. Fear of job loss. So that needs to be identified, at least from the engagements, I know, with the front lines, the middle managers. Of course, you need to make sure that you clear this out so that they won't have any fear. And for those that will be impacted, you make them understand that immediately. So new skills requirements may make some staff feel less qualified or obsolete. So for example, I can't remember the name of the organization. Now they adopted technology tools, AI tools, and they of course laid off their staff. Majority of the staff that are not needed to drive those technological tools. So out of changes, workforce planning changes, definitely some of them we have fear of job loss, and then it can lead to resistance, during that process. Then lack of inputs. This is also another part that should be tackled. You identify where it's coming from and you tackle it. So because some employees, they may not want to contribute. Why? Maybe they are not clear about the change initiatives, or probably maybe they are just reluctant. So employees want consultation in decisions impacting their jobs. And that is why I mentioned earlier that employees, they are key stakeholders. That place of engaging them from the scratch, from at least the basic platform that they need to know, we need to make sure that we get their input, we get their buy-in. Because if we don't get their buy-in, we don't have their input, then definitely this is going to happen. Lack of input is going to happen, and there is no way it will not hinder the timeline you set for yourself, the milestones you set for yourself. No matter how small inputs are, they have a long way to impact the process, either positively or negatively. Then poor communication. These are things that can actually contribute to resistance. Insufficient information about changes can cause uncertainty and rumors. That's why you see some of them, they will be whispering to one another, see what HR is doing. So uncertainty and rumors must be chunked out. Why? Because if poor communication is enabled, then it's going to create that resistance. But if you have quality communication process, quality communication strategy process, then definitely this will be ruled out. Then loss of control, changes disrupting established routines and of course practices. So if you're changing the processes, some of them will feel like, what is going on? My control is not, maybe I used to have control over this before, or that now things are drastically changing and it's looking like I'm losing it. So things like this can also create resistance. Status quo, adjustment, fatigue, lack of trust. All these things have a way of contributing to resistance, and you need to identify the source immediately when you kickstart the process. Implementing strategies to effectively manage and mitigate resistance. Number one, communicate early and clearly. Communicate early and clearly. Share why behind decisions and talk through impact. Make them understand the whys. Make them understand the whys first. With the whys, they will know why that decision was made. Communicate early and clearly. I'm talking across board, right from the leadership level to the mid-level to the frontline employees. Then involve staff in planning. get input through focus groups, advisory panels, and even surveys. So you can share survey internally. HR will do this a lot. Survey, do that pool, run the pool, then offer training to upskill employees to close skill gaps to qualify for new roles. So if maybe there are new roles that will be emerging in the organization, then upskill them. Let's encourage internal mobility instead. So you have to upskill your employees to close skill gaps to qualify for new roles. Then provide support, offer coaching, mentors. There are some persons that maybe you're moving, maybe for example, they need to apply for leave, their leave days and whatever, and maybe it's on paper. Then you've introduced a new HRS software. And they are having issues maybe to upload online or whatsoever. Some of them, it's not that maybe they don't want to do it, but they are just finding it difficult. They've not acclimatized to the process yet. You need to consistently talk, communicate, engage them, offer support, provide coaching, mentor them through that process, guide them through that process, give them resources, to navigate that transition process. Then phase-in changes allows time for people to digest smaller modifications. So it means your milestones, when you break it down, and then the others say, okay, this is phase one. It's give them that allowance to understand and digest, okay, this is the change we want to do for phase one. Okay, let's shoot it. When they're done with that one, then they move to phase two. When they're done with that one, they'll move to phase three. Then address concerns transparently, validate emotions and provide reassurance. Then show wins and milestones, celebrate successes through transition and to maintain morale. And lastly, share, of course, do incentives, to reward those who successfully embrace the changes. Recognize the people that actually, embrace the changes. Make sure that you recognize them. And that is really going to boost the core values, of the organization. So how can we cultivate an agile mindset? Because this also plays a vital role in the process. Being nimble, it plays a vital role. So we cultivating an agile mindset plays a vital role in change management when it comes to workforce planning. But let's talk about agile mindset. The agile mindset encompasses a mindset characterized by adaptability, collaboration, and continuous improvement. This actually affected Kodak. It affected Nokia, because they felt like, oh, where they are okay, everything is okay. And of course, the CEO of Nokia mentioned, we didn't do anything wrong, but we just know that we are out of business. But in the real sense, it's because they were not adaptable to the emerging disruptive business demands, in the market. So for us, having an agile mindset, definitely it means you're adaptable, you're collaborative, and you understand when it comes to continuous improvement. This involves being open to change, working closely with others, and constantly seeking ways to enhance processes and outcomes. This mindset values flexibility, customer satisfaction, and a focus on delivering value incrementally. So it actually encourages innovation, resilience, learning, and whatever. And adopting an agile mindset enables individuals and teams to navigate uncertainty, respond effectively to evolving challenges, and of course, drive sustainable growth, success. So while embracing an agile mindset to adapt to workforce planning strategy, I just spoke about we having an agile mindset, but now we need to embrace an agile mindset to adapt to workforce planning strategies. Number one, we need to implement agile planning cycles. That's transition from rigid annual planning to more flexible or quarterly or monthly cycles, allowing for iterative adjustments. So you need to change your plan, your cycles, in implementing these change processes. So for example, I know before organizations, when it comes to performance management, they have to wait for the whole year to conduct that. But now the narrative has changed. Now performance management is even, the evaluation is more like, is a monthly thing now. For some, it's even bi-weekly. I have an organization that I won't mention their name, but is I think is an Asian company, but they have an organization here in Nigeria. Their pay structure is performance based, and it is done bi-weekly. Once your KPIs are listed out for, I think after the second week, they pay twice in a month. After the second week, they'll look at your KPI. Once they say that you have achieved all your target for those 2 weeks, then they pay you. But if you've not achieved it, no payment. And that's very agile. It has a way, it's really going to impact the workforce in terms of management, productivity, results, and whatsoever. It has a way. So in our processes, we need to implement agile planning cycles. We also need to integrate scenario planning, prepare for various business scenarios by developing contingency plans and alternative strategies. We need to do that too. We need to be agile. We need to be forward thinking. We need to be proactive. We need to be nimble. We also need to prioritize skills, flexibility, focus on acquiring versatile skills that enables employees to adapt to evolving roles and responsibilities. Now, customer behavior is changing. So the current skill sets that we have in the organization, can it actually service the new demands in the market? If not, then we need to upskill them, or we need to reskill the talent. This is very, very important. Then, of course, we need to foster flexible team structures, encourage the formation of cross-functional teams, facilitating fluid collaboration, and task allocation. All these things will help the workforce to be agile. It will create that mindset. And of course, recruit for learning agility. Seek individuals who exhibit a proactive attitude towards learning and demonstrate the ability to acquire new skills autonomously. Then we need to also promote workforce adaptability. Now, this thing is, you see, change is really daunting. It's really tasky. It's highly demanding. But because there's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot that goes into it. And you cannot do it alone. You need everybody, to carry this out. And that is why from the start, once you've carried out your gap analysis, you've carried out your audit processes, you've carried out your research, and you've been able to see that, okay, these are the anticipated challenges, these are the solutions, this is how your strategy should run, this is how you're going to communicate to them. Once you get that right, then it means that you will definitely be able to, you need to find a means of promoting the workforce, to be adaptable to that process. So you need to establish training programs geared towards enhancing adaptability, resilience, and of course, adapting in management change. Lastly, you need to automate routine tasks, streamline workforce analytics through automation, freeing up resources for more strategic endeavors. Now, if you're trying to instill, or let me say, if you want your workforce to embrace an agile mindset, to adapt workforce planning strategies that you are implementing, then you're gradually having an impact on the culture DNA of the business, or let me say, the way they do things. So how can you now instill a culture of continuous improvement? How can you instill a culture of continuous improvement? Number one, you have to encourage innovation. Allocate resources and time for employees to explore and experiment with fresh approaches and ideas in all phases of operations. Then you need to do what? Foster fearless exploration. Give room for people to be themselves when carrying out these change initiatives. However, of course, they have to be guided, but give them that room. Let them cultivate an environment where taking calculated risk is involved. And of course, learning from their failures is highly encouraged. Nurturing a culture that values experimentation as a pathway to improvement. Then, of course, solicit ongoing inputs. Make sure you have that feedback mechanism. Utilize diverse feedback mechanisms such as pulse survey, town hall meeting, and focus groups to gather insights from employees, ensuring continuous identification of areas for enhancements. And we have many of them, as you can see my screen. Learn from external standards, empower employee engagement, recognize optimization efforts, cultivate change management competencies, provide comprehensive training and resources to equip employees with the skill and knowledge needed to navigate organizational changes effectively, ensuring smooth transitions and sustained improvement efforts. So the next thing we need to talk about is leveraging technology for change initiatives. Utilizing technology as a catalyst for change involves embracing digital solutions to streamline processes and enhance collaboration, while also leveraging automation to optimize efficiency and accuracy. By harnessing the power of data analytics, organizations can make data-driven decisions, identify trends, and uncover insights to drive innovation and improve performance. Moreover, integrating remote work technologies enables flexibility and connectivity, empowering employees to work efficiently from anywhere. So prioritizing cybersecurity measures ensures the integrity and protection of digital assets. Anyways, overall, leveraging technology for change enables organizations to adapt to the demands of the digital age, driving productivity, innovation, and resilience in an increasingly interconnected world. Now we just defined what it means to leverage technology for change. But how can we evaluate the role of technology in facilitating change within workforce planning? How? How can we evaluate the role of technology in facilitating change within workforce planning? I know we have a lot of ideas, but these are the ones I can actually itemize at the moment. You need to assess the current HR systems. You need to review your existing HRS, ATS software, whatsoever HR systems or tools that you're using. You need to review the existing software. You need to even review the talent management and, of course, the workforce analytics softwares. Identify the limitations and all the gaps. And then you need to research, explore for new tools for virtual collaboration, for pulse survey, skill gap analysis, and succession planning. Research software options. Once you've identified the limitations and gaps, then you have to explore for new tools. Then build business case, analyze the costs, the benefits. You want to introduce a new technological tool. You have to analyze the costs. Will that cost be too much for the change strategy? Because of course, for change strategy too, there are cost implications. But if it's above your budget, is it going to fly? Will you get the buy-in of the leadership? Will you get the buy-in of the key stakeholders? These are things you need to evaluate when you want to integrate technology in facilitating change when it comes to workforce planning. So you need to analyze cost, the benefit risk, strategic impact of potential HR tech investments. Also, you need to obtain leadership buy-in. I've mentioned that already, the budget, the tools, and analytics resources. You also need to define new capabilities needed to enable the workforce changes like remote hiring, continuous performance management, because you are integrating technology. So you need to find out what skills do you need to train your staff on. How can they use those tools if it's actually approved? Which skill do they need to have right now? Do you need to train them for 1 week? You need to train them for 2 weeks? Map updated requirements that are needed, to drive the technology. But first, identify them. You need to identify them. Now, utilizing innovative tools and analytics for efficient change initiatives. Number one, facilitate seamless communication and coordination among teams. Like I'm trying to say here, how can you utilize innovative tools and analytics to effect change initiative? Why facilitating it, one of the critical things is to give you that seamless communication and coordination among teams. We have different tools that we use to communicate. It's not every time you have to meet them physically. What if your organization is a multinational and you have different locations across the globe? How are you going to drive the change initiative? Through technology. And of course, with this, it's going to help you to streamline the implementation of change efforts. With technology, utilizing the innovative tools and information, data analytics that you have, it's going to help you to streamline the implementation. Then it will help you to provide deep insight into operations. It will help you to provide deep insight into operation. It will even help you to identify the areas for improvement. As you start with phase 1, you will still see some areas for improvement. When you move to phase 2, you will discover some. Why? Because there's data capturing in terms of performance, in terms of the timelines, in terms of the principal and the secondary accountability officers, in terms of the key stakeholders, their involvement, everything you'll be able to see through, and then identify areas for improvement. Then accurately measure the impact of change initiatives. Over time, you will see the impact. Is it making sense? Is it not making sense? Hope it's not like a waste, or is it actually a very good investment? This will definitely help us to understand the change initiatives as we are implementing the process. Then it enhances organizational agility. When you leverage on analytics, information, with the innovative tools that you're using to capture this information, it will help you to enhance the organizational agility. Because with this, it's going to help people to be more proactive. They know what to do from time to time. They know this is where we are. Okay, these are the things, these are the gaps. Okay, these are the new. It will really help to enhance organizational agility. Of course, it's going to optimize resource utilization. It's going to accelerate the pace of change. It's going to drive greater success and sustainability. And it's going to foster innovation and adaptation in a dynamic business environment. The next thing I'd like to talk about is communication. And you notice from the beginning, I've been talking about communication, because it's vital, it's important. Communication is very, very critical. It's very critical. You can tell someone A now, and when the person is actually transmitting into another person or communicating to another person, the person will hear A plus. When the other person communicates to another person, the person will hear A plus B. But how can you communicate from the top bottom? How can you communicate effectively with your strategies that you have put in place? And strategies, we can always test them out, because strategies can fail and strategies can also be successful. But make sure that you have piloted your strategies before implementing, at least test from them. See how, or try to envisage how well it's going to be effective when it comes to you implementing change management or initiatives. So effective communication strategies are vital for organizations to convey messages clearly, engage stakeholders, and of course, to drive the desired outcomes. That's the bottom line. Information, carrying them along, knowing what next to do, discovering, okay, where are the challenges? but that communication is very important. So developing and implementing communication strategies for change initiative, the first thing you need to do is to identify key stakeholders and target audience for the change initiatives. I've mentioned this earlier. And then how are you now going to tailor the communication messages to address the specific needs and concerns of different stakeholders group? You need to choose the appropriate communication channels and mediums based on the preferences and accessibility of the audience. You also need to establish clear objectives and timeline for communication activities to ensure alignment with the overall change plan. And lastly, you need to assign responsibilities and designate communication champions to oversee the execution of communication strategies. So this, you need to put it in place. You need to put this initiative in place. In terms, I'm talking about your communication strategy. You need to flesh this out. Let me put it that way. You need to flesh this out. Also, communication must also be transparent. Always ensure that your communication is consistent and it is transparent throughout the change process. Make sure that it is transparent, make sure that it is consistent throughout the change process. It's something that you have to reiterate over time. You have general work meeting, you have forum meeting, you just have to reiterate it consistently throughout that process. It's very critical. So you need to foster a culture of transparency by openly sharing information about the reason behind the change, its expected outcomes, and potential impacts. I've mentioned this earlier. You need to provide regular updates and progress reports to keep stakeholders informed and engaged throughout the change process. You also need to encourage two-way communication channels, such as feedback mechanism, open forum, to solicit inputs, address concerns, and foster dialogue. This is very critical because if it's a one-way traffic, definitely you may not get the best result. But when it is two-way communication channel, definitely you'll be able to get a lot of feedback where you need to tweak, where you need to improve, where you need to change some things, where you need to reinforce some things. This will definitely inform you on what to do. Then maintain consistency in messaging across all communication channels to avoid confusion and ensure alignment with the organization's goal and values. Then address resistance. Remember, we've identified what can actually lead to that. So you address resistance and manage expectations by proactively addressing misconceptions, clarifying uncertainties, and demonstrating empathy towards stakeholders' concerns. So I'd like to talk about the milestones, the strategy you put in place, the process flow, the people that are carrying this out. You should be able to monitor and evaluate every single process, every single input, every single output. You should be able to do what? Monitor them and evaluate it so that at least maybe if it's per week or maybe after 2 weeks or whatever metrics or strategy you've adopted, you should be able to tell the key stakeholders that gave you the buy-in to say, we are progressing, to confirm that you're progressing and not the other way around. So monitoring and evaluation of change initiatives is actually another critical ingredient that is very key when it comes to change management in workforce planning. So implementing mechanisms for monitoring progress and effectiveness. The first thing you need to do when you need to implement the mechanisms for monitoring progress and effectiveness, you need to establish clear processes, procedures. You need to establish clear mechanisms, processes for monitoring the progress of change initiatives throughout your implementation. 2, you need to define KPIs, and metrics to track relevant aspects of the change, such as project milestones, such as employee engagement, and operational efficiency. You need to do what? You need to define it, because it is what you define that you would like to see the outcome. So you need to define that. You need to utilize technology tools and systems to collect and analyze data effectively, providing real-time insights into the status of change initiatives. You also need to assign responsibility for monitoring activities to designated individuals or teams, ensuring accountability and timely reporting on progress. You also need to regularly review monitoring data, identify any deviations or areas requiring attention, and take corrective actions as necessary to keep change initiatives on track. So these are processes you can actually adopt in implementing mechanisms and monitoring progress, and effectiveness. I would also like to talk about the KPIs. So I want to flesh that out a bit. I mentioned project milestones, employee engagement, operational, but people they would like to know, okay, what are the KPIs? Don't just talk to us peripherally. Let us have an idea. So defining the KPIs, like I mentioned, to measure relevant aspects of change process and its impact. For project milestones, you need to talk about the percentage of project milestones achieved on time, the number of tasks completed against the project timeline, the project budget variance, what's the actual and what's the planned. This needs to be put into consideration. You can even increase, the KPIs under project milestones, depending on what you really want to achieve and what you want to see. In terms of employee engagement, you must definitely have employee satisfaction survey score. Employee turnover rates before and after the change. You need to have that information. You need to have that critical information. The participation rates in change-related activities, like our training session, feedback, all these things must be met. So you have to assess them. Then operational efficiency, what's the process cycle time? The time taken to complete a specific process or a task. What's the results going to be like? How have you been able to, measure that KPI? What is the expected results? You need to also put that into consideration. The cost saving achieved through process improvements. Quality metrics, that's the error rates, the defect rates, the customer satisfaction scores related to change processes. All this information, they are things that you can actually establish, in measuring the relevant aspects of change process. Then, of course, change adoption, the adoption rate of new tools, the systems or processes among employees, that also you can measure it as a KPI. The rate of compliance with new policies or procedures, you also need to actually look into that. Time taken for employees to adapt to change, the learning curve and everything, assess it. Then the business impact, the revenue or profits growth attributed to the change initiative, you need to actually measure that. Then cost savings or cost avoidance achieved through the change initiative too. You need to also do that. Then, of course, your NPS, customer satisfaction score or net promoter score, either for internal employees or for external customers, you need to also have that KPI put in place. Then lastly, risk management. You need to identify the issues or risk and the solutions related to that change. You should have a KPI around that too. You need to have systematic KPIs in place that can actually address this. The number of incidents or disruptions caused by the change, you need to also have a KPI that can look into that. Then effectiveness of mitigation strategies implemented to address identified risk. So these are just some of the KPIs I was able to identify. Based on the type of change that we want to do or implement, we need to define the KPIs. It is very important that we define the KPIs to measure the relevant aspects of the change process and its impacts. Now, developing evaluation criteria to assess impact on organizational goals. These are the laid down strategies I put in place for us to develop evaluation criteria in assessing the impacts on our organizational goal. Because remember, every change initiative must tally with the organizational goal, if we remember that clearly. So there must be a way that must gel well. Of course, there are ways you must measure them, you must assess them, you must evaluate them, and there are criteria you have to put in place in order to actually achieve what you're meant to achieve concerning the organizational goal. So the first thing is you need to define clear evaluation criteria and objectives aligned with the goals of the organization and the specific objectives of the change initiatives. You must get this first. The criteria, you must get them clearly. It's very important. The objectives, you must get them right. Then, when you've done this, then you now consider both qualitative and quantitative measures to assess the impact of change initiatives on various aspects of the organization, including performance culture, stakeholder satisfaction, because at the end of it all, the stakeholders will confirm if they are satisfied or not. Then engage stakeholders in the development of evaluation criteria to ensure alignment with the expectations and priorities. Then implement evaluation methodologies such as survey, interviews, focus groups, performance review to gather relevant data and insights. You also need to analyze evaluation findings to assess the effectiveness of the change initiatives, identify the strengths, the weaknesses, and area for improvement, and inform future decision-making and planning processes. So these are ways you can develop evaluation criteria to assess the impact of the change initiatives on the organizational goals. This needs to be put into consideration. Okay, so I think we'll be wrapping up soon. Adherence to legal and ethical standards. As a company, as an organization, of course, we have regulatory bodies. And of course, in the process of implementing our change initiatives, we need to also put into consideration the legal impacts, the legal and ethical standards. We need to put that into consideration and find out where we must adhere to the legal and ethical standards of maybe the country or the industry or anything that has to do with the workforce. No, we need to find them out and adhere strictly to them. So adherence to legal and ethical standards. Adherence to legal and ethical standards refers to the commitment of organizations to comply with all the applicable laws, regulations, and ethical principles in their operations, decision-making processes, and interactions with stakeholders. Another thing is that this includes ensuring that organizations' actions, policies, and practices are aligned with legal requirements established by the governmental authorities, industry standards, and professional codes of conduct. Adherence to ethical standards involves upholding principles of integrity, fairness, honesty, and respect for individuals' rights and dignity in all aspects of organizational conduct. For example, if your change initiative is going to downsize a huge number of your workforce, then do it in the right way. Follow the legal procedures, okay? Do the right documentation. When it comes to exit management, do the right thing. It's either you onboard them or you exit them in the right way. And then it's also based on your location. If it's in the United States, for example, how are you going to do it? If it's in Africa, West Africa, how are you going to do that? If it's in Asia, how are you going to do it? If it's in Europe, how are you going to do that in UK? So all these things, you need to put them into consideration and make sure that you are there to the legal and ethical standards when you're implementing your change initiatives around workforce planning. So you need to understand the legal and ethical considerations in workforce planning changes. Number one, gain a comprehensive understanding of the legal and the ethical implications associated with workforce planning changes, including recruitment, hiring, promotion, termination practices. So please gain a comprehensive understanding of the legal and ethical implications associated with that change initiative that you want to execute. Two, stay informed about relevant laws, regulations, industry standards governing workforce management, such as labor laws, equal employment opportunity regulations, ILO regulations, data protection laws, etc., and that. You need to be updated from time to time, be highly informed about all these relevant laws and regulation. Also, consider ethical principles and values such as fairness, transparency, respect for diversity and inclusion, and when making workforce planning decisions that impacts employees' rights and well-being, this needs to be put into consideration. I remember there was a time I think that's 2019 in an FMCG company when it was like an exodus, a massive retrenchment of casual staff. Casual staff, that was massive. You get now, maybe in another country, the way that is being done may not be palatable, it might not be the right way. So we need to, even if we want to terminate people based on a change initiative or whatsoever, we need to understand the legal and ethical considerations so that it won't end up in the courts or it won't end up in the favor of the people that you have even laid off or whatever process that you have actually implemented. Or maybe is you adopting a process. Maybe you need to now have an approval by a regulatory body to execute that change initiative. And maybe because you did not get the right approval process, definitely they will fine you. So when you want to implement change initiatives concerning your workforce, make sure they are also adhering to the legal and the ethical considerations that are required of us. Also, I would like to mention that in ensuring compliance with relevant employment laws and regulations, we need to conduct regular audits and reviews to assess compliance with applicable employment laws and regulations at all stages of the workforce planning process. And that's why data is very important. That's why technology is also important. The tools you'll be using to conduct data capturing, the people you've assigned, all these things are critical. They are very, very key, very, very important, because these are the informations you are going to use, to protect the organization when it comes to legal issues or escalation. Then establish policies, procedures, and guidelines that align with legal requirements and ethical standards, ensuring that all workforce planning activities are conducted in a legally compliant and ethical manner. If you don't have the policies, develop one. Make sure that every single procedure that you establish in terms of the policies, procedures, the guidelines, make sure they are aligned with legal requirements. If you develop a new policy, make sure it aligns, not the other way around. Make sure it aligns appropriately. Then provide training and education to employees involved in workforce planning activities to increase awareness of legal and ethical considerations and to also promote adherence to compliance standards. You need to provide training, which is also part of communication. Then establish mechanisms for reporting and addressing potential violations of legal and ethical standards including whistleblower protections and avenues for confidential reporting. Then lastly, collaborate with legal counsel and human resources professionals to address complex issues and ensure that workforce planning changes are implemented in accordance with the law and ethical principles. So in summary, workforce planning must become a more dynamic capability in today's fast-changing business environment. Organizations need to take a strategic data-driven approach to regularly assessing and adopting their talent needs and strategies. This requires embracing agility and continuous improvements in planning cycles rather than rigid annual processes. Leaders should engage stakeholders. I'm talking about HR leaders or key leaders should engage stakeholders at all levels to ensure buy-ins and inputs that shapes effective changes. So these leaders, they must implement new technologies. HR people have to implement new technologies like analytics, dashboards, pulse surveys, and collaboration tools that enable more real-time and proactive workforce planning. With strong change management fundamentals around communication, involvement, and cultural alignment, companies can execute workforce changes in a human-centered way. So ultimately, to mobilize the workforce as a competitive advantage, organizations must invest in both upskilling their people and up-leveling their HR strategies and system. So here I come to the end of my little knowledge that I want to share with everyone. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you very much for giving me the time, to share one or two things around change management when it comes to workforce planning. Thank you so much. I am now open for questions, or we end the conversation for today. Thank you very much.
Wow, 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 wow. Thank you very much, Mr. Alasta. Thank you very, very much. That was explosive. Please, can we all appreciate Mr. Michael? You gave us a full course in 1 hour, 30 minutes. Thank you so much. Kindly appreciate Mr. Alasta. Thank you, thank you. A round of applause for him. My head is overfull now. You were super, super informative. Thank you very much. Please appreciate Mr. Michael. This was wonderful. You knew the topic and you delivered to the fullest. Thank you very much for sharing your knowledge with us. It was super informative. Thank you. Kindly appreciate him. I know we have learned a lot here. Please let us share whatever it is we have learned here. Let us share our take home from this learning session. It was power packed. Mr. Michael, thank you very much. You did a wonderful job. You did a wonderful job. Let us share our contributions here. If you have questions to ask, please put in the chat box. Or if you want to speak, just raise your hand. Let's allow you ask your question. Is there no question? Are there no questions? Questions, contributions? Let us see them. Let us ask our questions. Thank you once again, Mr. Michael. We appreciate you. We are saying thank you. Thank you. Somebody,
Thank you very much.
is saying thank you for your excellent presentation, knowledgeable and top-notch. Thank you. Well done.
Thank you.
Always raising the bar. Association of Elite Human Resources saying always raising the bar. You always raise the bar. Thank you very much. Are there questions to ask? If you have any questions, please let us put them in the chat box. Let us ask our question. Let us ask our questions. Mr. Michael is ready for our question. Whatsoever question you have, please bring it on. If you do not understand any part of what is said, please ask questions so that it can clarify us. Olabi is saying this is insightful. It is indeed insightful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Questions, please. Let us ask our questions. So as we are trying to ask questions, I'd like to let us know that the attendance link has been dropped in the chat box. Let us try as much as we can to fill the form. The attendance is very crucial to this learning session. So are there contributions to be made? If you have contributions, please share it, or if you want to speak, we'll allow you to speak, please. I'd like to call on Mr. Larewaju. Is he there? Do you have contributions to make? Are there no contributions?
Please, I will
I'd like
appreciate
to-
our feedback.
Mr. Alasa is ready for our questions. If you have questions, please let us ask him. This learning session was power-packed. It was too full. Favor is saying thank you. Your presentation was quite detailed and very insightful. Again, that the attendance link has been dropped. So please let us try and fill the form. Somebody is asking, Esther Aribigi is asking, can we have access to the soft copy?
So I think the learning committee is in charge
I
of
think
that.
we'll share that. We'll share that to everyone. That's after the learning session. We'll share that to everyone. Do you have any other question? So before we come back to the question, I'd like to call on Mr. Oluwatoyin. Okay, somebody is asking a question, Gloria. He says, in a construction firm where you have more of casual workers and most of them have low education level, how do you implement change? Mr. Lassa, please. Mr. Michael.
All right, okay.
My hand
Okay,
is
so-
raised.
Okay, should I respond to the question first? Should I respond to the question first?
Yes, please. Should
All
I
right.
read it again?
Yeah, I get the question. I get the question.
Okay.
So yes, so it's still communication. It's still communication. You need to understand how to communicate to them. So for example, I remembered while I was working with a logistics firm, and we wanted to implement. So this logistics firm, they are into truckling. So, and of course, the huge number of staff that we have there are drivers. So these are semi-skilled people. They don't really even have, maybe most of them, they even drop out, or maybe they have SSC certificates. So, and we wanted to drive a transformative change for the business. You know, it was based in Calabar, Abuja, Enugu, and the likes. So how was I able to do that? The first thing, my communication strategy, I needed to work on it. How am I going to get this information down to those in Port Harcourt, those at Enugu, those in Calabar? I think for Calabar, I had to fly over there, those in Lagos, and of course, those at Abuja, because majority of them, they are drivers. Fine, we have fleet officers and co, but these drivers, you must come down to their level. You have to come down to their level and break it down. and you can't rush them. You have to break it down. You have to train them. So we do have a stand-up meeting every morning. So I need to, so before the initial day of implementation, you would have started your communication. So for every day, we had a stand-up communication platform whereby I'll meet them and then tell them, okay, oh, this is what we want to do. Then I'll ask them questions if they understand, if they understand how this is going to be done or whatsoever. And then they will also respond that, Oga, I don't understand. So sometimes I have to come down to their level, change it to broken language, that's English, or you break it down to Yoruba, or you break it down to their Calabar language or whatsoever, because information is very important. Language too is also important. So the moment you're able to come down to their level and explain to them, for some of them, it's even pictorial process. You have to use pictures to communicate. Communication can be done in diverse ways. It's not only about talking. Diagrams, pictures, storytelling, all these things can really help them to understand the pros and cons, the risk, the impact, the good side and the bad side, whatsoever is going to help them. But since you've been able to identify that they are casual workers, that is even that's a good one. Firstly, because it means you've been able to stratify your cadre, your workforce. You'll be able to stratify or categorize your workforce to say, these guys, they are the frontline employees, and my communication strategy for them will be different from the middle line managers. It's going to be different from the top line managers. So with what you have identified here, you will definitely have to come down to their own level of communication. So since it is a construction firm, you have to make use of physical tools. You have to practicalize some of them physically, for them to see that, okay, this is the way it plays out. In fact, you can even engage them so that they can have a mock event, or let me put it that way, to practicalize what they are meant to do based on their level of their cadre. I don't know if my answer actually, my contribution actually answers your question.
Okay, Mr. Alasa, thank you very much. Thank you very, very much. So at this point, I'd like to call on Mrs. Oluwatoyin if she has announcements to give. Mrs. Toyin, is Mrs. Toyin there?
Yes, Toyin is here. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Well done.
Please, your announcement.
All right. Thank you so much, Obiageri. And thank you once again, MA, for the insightful session. I am very, very sure, because even myself, I will still need to go back to the recordings. Our recordings you can watch our recordings again, over and over again, on our YouTube channel. So you just need to subscribe to our YouTube channel to have this, to watch these learning sessions again, because there are a lot that can be just assimilated at once. I was taking notes, and then I was just like, okay, it's a good one. I need just to go back to it again and listen once more. So not just this learning session, you will also have access to our previous learning sessions. So just subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can have more details on that. Learning session has started, so we will be reminding you that another learning session will be holding next week. Please let's clear our calendars and be in attendance for these learnings. They promise to be very, very insightful. You would not want to miss it. Please clear your calendars to attend all our learning sessions. And if you have any other questions, you can take it back to the Telegram group. We'll have all our facilitators to answer your question. Thank you. That will be all from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Swain. That was well said. So, in the absence of any other question, I would like to say on behalf of the Board of Trustees.
You have Herbert on. You have Herbert's hand up, please.
Sorry.
Herbert, you have
Okay.
the floor.
Okay. So sorry. Albert, please.
All right, thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. I just wanted to point out that somebody was raising her hand earlier and wanted to say something. I think Most Sweet was raising her hand earlier, and I think she had something she wanted to say. That was why I had to raise my hand, so I could call your attention to that. Thank you.
Most Sweet's hand is raised.
And Most Sweet's hand has been pinning her, please.
I'm so sorry about that. Please, can you go ahead with your question?
Go ahead.
Or contribution?
you.
I'm so sorry.
I pardon you, Obiageli. You can't see everything. I understand. Thank you for a good moderation, and thank you, Speaker Michael Alasa. It's always nice to learn from the veterans. I wanted to say, when you were saying if they have any question and anything to add, one of the things I want to add is that change is constant, and as professionals, managing change is tantamount to our success in wherever role or whatever organization or wherever we find ourselves. That's what I have to say. Then, in addition to the question that was asked about how to communicate change to employees who have low level of education, we call them blue-collar employees. To an extent, I had the privilege of managing such group of people. Can you hear me?
Do you want me to?
Yes, we
Please
can.
go ahead. Somebody is disturbing at the background. Please
Oh, okay, yeah. So I was saying that I had the privilege of managing blue-collar employees. In fact, they constituted about 70% of my workforce then, and they were a major stakeholder in the success of my professional career in the organization. And one of the strategies I use is, when we have anything to communicate, when there's a change, maybe policy, we are trying to do performance management or anything, one thing I don't do is add them to the general meeting. One, they feel intimidated and you don't get them to ask any question if you mix them up with every other members of the white-collar employees. So we kind of do it in batches. It's also not to segregate, because sometimes when you are trying to use this strategy, you need to be careful so that it doesn't look like, oh, some people are preferred, some people are special, and some people are not special. But just to be able to drive home my point and my communication in a way that they would understand. The way I would communicate with the C-suite executive is different from the way I would communicate with a blue-collar, a construction worker, a truck loader, a vessel offloader, a truck driver, a driver assistant. Like Michael said, most of them are dropout. I don't like to use that word. I say most of them are not, did not go beyond primary school certificates. But we needed their skill, because you don't have someone as a professor that wants to drive a truck. So their skill is actually very important. And so aside going to their level and doing their meetings separately to communicate to them, it goes down. He wasn't exaggerating when he said sometimes he needs to speak in pidgin. Yes, if that is the strategy that will work, if that's the way they would understand, you will use that word. Pictures. You know, you have truck drivers in your organization. You're saying that this is the bathroom. This is where you use to ease yourself, to urinate and all that. And then people still do something else, and you're wondering, like, is it that they are not hearing? We have to put picture, draw a man trying to urinate in the wrong place and putting a picture of somebody nabbing that person before it worked. It's not that they did not understand pidgin English, but sometimes when they are going to do it, they see the picture, it sticks in their brain. And it doesn't mean that they are less privileged or we are better than them. It's just the way you will communicate with a child is different from the way you will communicate with an adult. Just look at it in that manner. Thank you.
That was spot on. Thank you very much, Ms. Sweet. That was a wonderful contribution. Thank you very much. So I'd like to say again that the attendance link has been shared. Please let us try as much as we can to fill the attendance form. It is very important we all do that. So at this point, I would like to say on behalf of the Board of Trustees, the Management Committee, and the entire members of the AEHRC, I want to say a big, big thank you for joining us. And to our speaker, we say thank you very much. I earlier said that it was going to be power-packed, and I'm sure everybody is sure that you did not disappoint us. Thank you very much. Next week, we'll be having another power-packed learning section. Please try and join us next week. And as you come, please try and come with at least one guest. Thank you very much, and God bless you.